Tomorrow is Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday. He said, "Use me, God. Show me how to take who I am, who I want to be, and what I can do and use it for a purpose greater than myself. Use me, God. Show me how to take who I am, who I want to be, and what I can do and use it for a purpose greater than myself." We are all here for a purpose that is greater than ourselves. Don't worry. That can sound like, whoa. That purpose is to be a beacon of light for ourselves and for others, in whatever way that shows up, in whatever way is intrinsically real and authentic to us. We just saw Darcy Bradley be a beacon of light to all of us, didn't we? Yeah. That's what we are here for. So, last week, for those of you who didn't see my talk last week, I shared the Christmas saga at the airport. We were there, from 5:30 in the morning, Christmas Eve, all the way up to the wee hours, and then on Christmas Day, all the way up to the wee hours, and then we ended up finally just renting a car and driving 2 days bumper-to-bumper traffic to California. We stayed in some woefully sad Holiday Inn outside of Redding. Woo! But I'll tell you, as I shared last week, that opportunity of being in that airport for those many hours gave me such an opportunity to see the microcosm of humanity at play. And so what I want to talk about today is I really want to unpack some of the spiritual tools that I provided for you last week in a new way so that we can see them through perhaps a different lens so that they can be reinforced even more. Sound good? So really, this is kind of part two to the talk from last week. But if you didn't see the talk from last week, fear not. It's fine. It'll all make sense. I invite you into it if you haven't yet seen it. So this idea that I brought in, if you recall, the idea of first thought, second thought, first action. So all of us have a very human first thought when the world gets challenging, messy, or kerfuffly. Yes? And sometimes those first thoughts we're not so proud of, but that's just part of us being human. And it happens to every single one of us. It happens to all of us. And it comes from our reptilian brain, that part of us that goes into survival mode when something difficult, challenging, or annoying happens. We still think we're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. I don't believe any of us are at this point. And yet, we go to that place immediately, right? That sort of DNA memory of fear, and we go right into that place of survival. That's the reptilian brain. And that takes us to the first thought. I shared last week those first thoughts are often not the most holy or the most pleasant, but they are human, and we get to embrace all of it, yes? So we have our first thought when something difficult happens. And I asked you this last week to start to become aware of those first thoughts that you have and see if you can move to the second thought. The second thought is what we can choose. Choosing our second thought, choosing that is spiritual maturity. When you see grown-ups having temper tantrums, starting with us, we all have them, we have gone from first thought to first action. We have not moved from our first thought to our second thought. Our second thought is the opportunity to choose peace, calm, presence, compassion, benefit of the doubt. If we can get from that first thought to that second thought, our whole life changes. Because as I brought in last week, this idea, this teaching from the Buddha that what we think we become, and there's many different translations of that, but that's the Buddhist teaching. It came from Buddhism, is that our thinking creates our life. So if we can move from first thought, reptilian brain, to spiritual maturity, to that moment where we take a breath. Now, in between those two things, there's like a bridge of hang time. And that bridge I'm going to invite you to practice is the breath. Just breathe. From the first thought to the second thought, just breathe. It gives us a moment to align with the divine, to make a conscious choice that we then take forward. Thich Nhat Hanh, great Vietnamese teacher and monk, for those of you who don't know, he made his transition a year ago next week, actually. So I've been reading him lately, celebrating all that he brought our movement and myself personally as far as his teachings. He tells a story in his book called Fear that's really telling, and it explains this so beautifully. He tells the story when he was in Vietnam, a young monk there, and by the way, he greatly influenced Dr. Martin Luther King in the civil rights movement. Just so you know, they were contemporaries, and Martin Luther King has writings, and he talks about how the nonviolent movement really, Thich Nhat Hanh really helped to shape that, and that is something called engaged Buddhism, by the way, that Thich Nhat Hanh was involved in. So, he tells a story about being in Vietnam. He was a very young monk. He was on the airstrip, and he wouldn't normally be there, but there was flooding in a neighboring village, and there was no way to get there. So this military plane was going to come get him and bring him to the nearby village so that he could advise and try to help because there was the flooding there. And so he's waiting. He's the only one on the airstrip, and all of a sudden, this American soldier comes. Thich Nhat Hanh describes in that moment seeing the young American soldier, and he emphasizes how young he was. And he felt so much compassion for this soldier, so much compassion for the position that this young man was in. And wanting to connect with this young man, he said to him, with all good intentions, "You must be afraid of the Viet Cong." Now, for those of you who don't know, the Viet Cong were communist guerrillas, the absolute opposite of what Thich Nhat Hanh as a monk represented and was. And so he was trying to say this just to simply provide comfort for this young man. However, what he didn't realize in that moment, saying that, was that US soldiers at the time were trained to be very afraid of the Viet Cong, and that they could be anywhere, including that they could be monks in disguise. And so this US soldier, immediately, when he heard the word Viet Cong, he grabbed his gun and he was getting ready to kill Thich Nhat Hanh. Thich Nhat Hanh's first thought was fear, I may die. He took a breath. As this US soldier has his hand on his gun, and he knows that he could die any second. His second thought was calm. Thich Nhat Hanh engaged in profound calmness on that breath. And then he was able to calmly, with great presence, share with the soldier that no, he was there to help. He was getting on the same plane to go to the next town to help with flooding. Eventually, the soldier took his hand off his gun. They began to talk, and they began to really communicate about how hard this war was and how sad they both were for both the Vietnamese and the Americans. First thought, second thought, first action. Thich Nhat Hanh said, "We have more possibilities in each moment than we realize." We have more possibilities in each moment than we realize. When we can take a moment, take a breath, make a different choice, we are participating in the greater good. Again, Dr. King, use me, God, show me how to take who I am and who I want to be and what I can do and use it for a purpose greater than myself. So it's this idea that we get to choose. Now, choosing can be challenging, yes? Because so often we're in that knee-jerk reaction. I love what the Sufis say, and it's often attributed to Buddha. It wasn't Buddha. It was the Sufi. It's from the Sufi tradition. And they say, before you speak, I've shared this with you before, but it's wonderful to think about beginning of the year. Before you speak, Let your words pass through 3 gates. The first gate, is it true? The second gate, is it necessary? And the third gate, is it kind? Right before you speak, is it true? Is it necessary? And is it kind? Now let me share. We can be in the midst of an argument. We can be in a town hall meeting saying we don't agree with something that's happening. We can be in a march. And we can say what is true, what is necessary in a kind way. Do you see? This beautiful idea applies to everything. To everything. Is it true? Is it necessary? And is it kind? That is a choice that we make. And that choice provides for the greater good every time. Every time. Now, there's one thing that we do every day from the time we wake up to the time we go to sleep, aside from breathing. There is one thing that we do, and that is we make choices all day long. All day long. Am I going to have coffee or tea? Oh, God, give me coffee. Hello. I love tea, but not in the morning. You know? Am I going to sleep in? Am I going to do yoga? Am I going to walk the dog an hour later? Am I going to call my mom? Am I going to fill in the blank? From the smallest, seemingly minuscule choice to the large, big choices, we are making choices all day long. The thing is, the more mindfulness that we add to these choices to our day, the more conscious we become. The more mindful we become in our life, yes? Think of it like this. It's almost like this, like a stream or a river. We're making choices as we go through the flow of life. And sometimes those choices will go up against rocks, and sometimes those choices will be smooth, and sometimes those choices will move into rushing waters. But eventually, they move to sea. They move to the sea. It becomes the ocean of our life. All the choices we make. Do I turn left? Do I turn right? Do I call them back? Do I not call them back? Do I keep this friendship? Do I not keep this friendship? Do I stay in this situation? Do I leave this situation? Do I put that into my body? Do I not put that into my body? Do I say that out loud? Do I speak with kindness? Do I breathe? All of this, all of it, creates our life and has a ripple effect for every person along that stream. People we don't even know. The fauna, the flora, all of it. All of the aspects of our life are intertwined in the decisions that we make. I'd like to invite you to take a moment. Let's bring this into some practical practice. There we go. Spiritual practice. Does that sound good? Are you willing? Okay. I'd like you to take a deep breath and just close your eyes for a moment. And I'd like for you to think of a choice that you need to make right now. A choice that is calling to you. It can be anything. I invite you to go with perhaps a bigger choice, if you can call that in and bring that to your mind's eye, those of you at home. What choice is kind of beckoning you? What is waiting in the wings for you to decide to do? What is that thing? Whatever that is for you, whatever that may be, take another deep breath in. And I invite you to think about your first thought around that choice. Your first thought. Is there any fear, any concern? Is there anything that is holding you back or that has been holding you back? What is that first thought? And how is that connected to the reptilian brain? What is that first thought? Is there hesitancy about this choice? Are you unsure about it? Are there trust issues? Are you worried about the outcome or what it may look like eventually? What is that? What is that first thought? Identify that for yourself, gently and compassionately. Now take a deep breath, breathe. Now I invite you to move to a second thought about this choice. Allow this second thought to have the qualities of divinity: love, peace, calm, compassion, divine right order, harmony, joy, abundance, trust. I invite you to wrap your second thought around this choice. And notice what this does. Notice how you feel about this potential choice now. Anchor this in your memory. Allow this to move you forward in this choice. Now I invite you to take a deep breath and gently open your eyes. We can do that with every choice we make. When we're faced with a difficult choice, when we're faced with something that is troubling, when we don't want to face a choice, I invite you to move from the first thought to the second thought in this mindful way. Again, Dr. King said, "Use me, God. Show me how to take who I am, who I want to be, and what I can do, and use it for a purpose greater than myself." I guarantee you, whatever choice that is will be beneficial to not only yourself or someone in your circle, if not the world. Do you see how all of this work, all that we do benefits the greater good? When we are in alignment, we are benefiting our siblings. Last week, I asked you to notice, to just gather evidence for good around you, or to notice if you were gathering evidence for not so good around you. The example, of course, was the airport. I could gather evidence for lots of good, but I could also gather evidence for lots of not good. Not so good. People not moving from first thought to second thought, but staying in first thought and acting in first thought, right? So did you find evidence for good this week? Did you? So I'm going to invite you to amplify that even more, to amplify that spiritual practice even more. I found some evidence for good. Did you know, you probably may have heard, that the world's very first vaccine for honeybees is now available? Terry, I know you work with bees. Are you excited about that? Isn't that amazing? Incredible. Incredible. Guess what else? Here's some more good I gathered this week. 146 new species of animals and plants were added to our world last year. 146. 44 lizards, 30 ants, 14 sea slugs, 14 flowering plants, 13 sea stars, 7 fishes, 7 of them. 4 sharks, 4 beetles, 3 moths, 3 worms, 2 scorpions, 2 spiders, 2 kinds of moss, 1 something I can't read, 1 clam, 1 aphid, and 1 sea biscuit. I had to look that up. It's a sea urchin. All of those new species on our planet. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that good? Our choices matter. The choices we make, the thoughtful choices we make a difference in this world. Why? Because as I shared last week, we live from the inside out. This world is a reflection of our inner experience. If we walk around all day saying, this is awful, this is terrible, this blah, 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 what do you think is going to come back? Blah, 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 blah. If we walk around extending a hand, extending a smile, connecting with those around us, that is what returns to us. Yes, we say every week, what we put out into the world returns to us multiplied abundantly. Well, there is a gentleman by the name of Grant Carson from Scotland. Grant Carson is this 58-year-old widower, and he is a man who spent 27 years of his life helping to find housing for those with disabilities in Scotland. 27 years, that's what he dedicated his life to. Guess what happened just a few weeks ago? Unbeknown to him, someone put him in a raffle, and he won a house worth 2.5 million pounds. What we put out into the world returns to us multiplied abundantly. Isn't he dear? Isn't he just the sweetest? And he has debilitating arthritis himself. He's had it since he was 7 years old, and he's always wanted a dog, but he's lived in a place that was too small, and he couldn't have a dog, and he gets to have a dog now. Are you kidding me? The choices we make matter. They matter. They add up. So I invite you this week to really, really look at moving even more from that first thought to second thought to first action. And then notice the first action. Notice how that can be a beneficial presence for something greater than yourself. Begin to lean into the spiritual practice of service. Who we are is to be of service. That's what it is to live this spiritual life that we are here, to be the helpers, you know? That's really, truly those of us on this spiritual path. We learn it for ourselves so that we can go out and be helpers for others. Before speaking, ask, is it true? Is it necessary? And is it kind? I say all the time, you can say anything with love. I mean that in my soul. I have said that at rallies, standing up for things that I believe in. For gun reform, for LGBTQIA rights, for women's rights. You can march with kindness and compassion and truth. Is it necessary? Yes, absolutely. Is it true? Yes, absolutely. Can I do it with kindness? Yes, absolutely. And finally, again, just reinforcing for you all, tune into the choices that you are making. Tune into those choices that you are making. When you have something challenging, a decision that needs to be made, I invite you to move from first thought to second thought, which leads to benevolent action. Hi, friends. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that this message supported you. We are a nonprofit, and we do all of this based solely on the gifts that you give. No amount is too small or too large. You can text to give. You can go online and check out our website. We're doing so much. You can give that way. Thank you so much for being here, for being a part of this community, and for supporting this message of bringing more light, more love, and spirit-led social action out into the world. Thank you. You're loved. So loved.